Welcome to lesson 5, which will be the biggie of this module, and it's on ongoing assessments beyond standard tracking methods. Let's start off with what I call the matrix of progress. This is something that I developed over the years in private practice, and it was developed specifically once I started doing online coaching. And I wanted to find ways that, unlike private practice, where I was able to take skinfold caliper assessments and do other types of body composition assessments within the facility, I wanted to find low tech but high effectiveness methods that clients could do themselves on a remote basis. And so with this particular method, all you need is a weighing scale and measuring tape and an inkling of how you're doing with respect to training performance, specifically lifting capacity. So in the first scenario called fat loss only, okay, doesn't have a cute name like the other stuff that we'll get to, but okay, fat loss only is indicated by a drop in body weight, a drop in waist girth, and the maintenance of lifting capacity. So when I say lifting capacity, I mean the same type of volume load that you're able to run. So number of reps and load and sets. And you can actually pretty reliably track lifting capacity by seeing if you can maintain the same number of reps on the initial work set of each exercise that you do per workout. That's a pretty good representation of if you can maintain that the number of reps in that initial work set per exercise, then that's a good indication that you are holding steady with strength performance or lifting capacity overall. Okay, so once again, fat loss only would be indicated by drop in body weight, drop in waist girth, stable in terms of lifting capacity. Now, waist girth is an interesting thing. Okay, so body weight too. You want to be able to measure it first thing in the morning after going to the bathroom. Waist girth, again, first thing in the morning after going to the bathroom. And I used to be able to teach clients how to blow out the air, and then just hold a certain posture in order to standardize, or at least attempt to standardize, the waist girth measurement. And it was always at the latitude of the navel, because it's a good landmark. It's really not going to go anywhere, and it happens to be at kind of the equator point, the girthiest point of the midsection anyway. So that's the belly button, the latitude of the belly button. Okay, so lean gain only would be indicated by an increase in body weight, stabilization of waist circumference, and an increase in lifting capacity. So what we can do with lifting performance is we can use it as sort of a surrogate indicator of what's going on with lean body mass. So if you are losing lifting strength, then the tendency will also be to be losing lean body mass. And then the opposite is also going to be the tendency too. If you're gaining lifting performance, then the tendency would be to gain lean mass alongside of that process. And so recomp, so now we're getting to the cute names here. Recomp, aka recomposition, where lean mass gain and fat mass loss happens at an roughly equivalent rate. Recomp doesn't always have to be an equivalent rate of lean mass gain and fat mass loss, but in this particular example and with this particular method, it is. So if body weight is stable and waist girth is decreasing and lifting strength is increasing, then we can safely say that to whatever relative degree, you are gaining lean mass and losing fat mass, as indicated by stable body weight, but decreased waist girth and increased lifting capacity. And dirty bulking, I lovingly called it bulking, which is short for fat bulking. And this is a simultaneous gain of lean mass and fat mass. And so that would be shown by an increase in all departments here. Increase in body weight, increase in waist girth, and increase in lifting strength. Okay, so from bulking, you can also be fading lean mass loss with fat mass loss. This is not ideal, but it sometimes it's inevitable when somebody is in a severely obese state and they're naturally carrying around a surplus of everything, including lean mass, to be able to carry that extra body weight around. So a certain amount of lean mass loss from a severe state of obesity is not uncommon, and it's not always a bad thing. And not to go down too far of a side note or a rabbit hole here, but lean mass is about 85 fat mass. Adipose tissue is about 15% water. So technically, even adipose mass has a small component of lean mass attached to it. Okay. So then we've got the final one over here, failing, which is basically the opposite of recomp. Recomp in the wrong direction, where you're gaining fat mass and losing lean mass. And this would be indicated by a drop in lifting strength, accompanied by an increase in waist girth while your body weight stays the same. So this is a low-tech way of tracking what's going on or what's trending with body composition, just by using a weighing scale and measuring tape and being aware of your lifting performance. And once again, this was developed by me as a way to work with clients on a remote basis if they didn't have access to a fancy device for estimating body composition. All right. So this is a cool thing. Another thing that I developed called adherence rubrics. And the initial appearance of this calendar method or adherence rubric was in a book I wrote in 2007 called Girth Control. So it's a now out of print self-published book. It was my first foray into publishing, but I just want to make sure that you know that this comes from way back in history. Okay, so adherence rubrics are customizable to 5 or 10 checkpoints. I originally started with a 10-point adherence rubric, and then I, over time and over the years, found that a 5-point adherence rubric could work just as good, just as well. Customizable to the individual's most crucial shortcomings or most important objectives. So these adherence rubrics, as you'll see, and it'll have a lot more meaning to it once you see what I'm talking about. They can be customized. You can literally create a different adherence rubric for every individual. So they're customizable to any goal, and this can include diet-related goals, exercise-related goals, any kind of behavior-related goals you can use adherence rubrics for. You can build an adherence rubric for. And the beauty of using adherence rubrics is that it's effective for daily accountability. And there's minimal time commitment on both sides, on the client's side as well as your side. So it makes the process of check-ins a lot quicker and less painful. Now, let's get concrete with what we're talking about here. So this is a 10-point adherence rubric where you essentially rate your compliance on a scale of 1 to 10. And the way that I used to do this, I used to have clients buy a physical calendar that they could post up in their office or on their fridge or anywhere prominent where they get to see it on a kind of a semi-constant basis. And with a calendar, for example, I would have them write each day, give themselves a compliance rating from 1 to 10. And that was the first incarnation of this system. And then it evolved into a system where I wanted that number to be more objective. And so that's where the 10-point rubric came in. So an adherence rubric would just be a checklist of things that you would want to achieve daily, whether they be tasks or whether they be, serving targets. Here's a generic 10-point adherence rubric that is oriented towards weight loss, and it's a nutrition based adherence rubric. But hey, we can customize it. So as one of the adherence points, I talk about sleep. Get a minimum of 7 hours of high quality sleep. Do your scheduled physical activity. Drink a minimum of 2 liters of plain water. Eat only when physically hungry. No snacking out of boredom or ritual. Stop eating when satisfied, not stuffed. At each main meal, start with the least caloric dense items first, beginning with water. Eat 2 to 3 servings of fresh fruit. Eat at least 2 servings of fibrous vegetables. Have at least 20 grams of protein with each main meal. And finally, optimal indulgence would be a maximum of 2 alcoholic beverages or a maximum of 1 small dessert serving. So each one of these adherence points is basically part of a checklist. If you nailed each one of these things, if you accomplished, carried out, executed all 10 of these in a day, then you give yourself a 10. And once again, the beauty of this type of system is that it takes a minimal amount of time for the client at the end of the day to assess, to check off the adherence points that they successfully met. Okay, minimal time commitment there. And of course, they have to be honest in order for this to work. And on your side of things, they can send you a number daily. And the only time they would need to send you more than a number, the only time they would need to send you commentary is if it's not a 10. So if it's a 9, then list the adherence point that you missed and give a brief reason, why it was missed, if you want to take the accountability that far. But the important thing is that you're getting a number sent to you daily. So the accountability is really tight when it's daily. Okay, so this, like I said, this is a generic 10-point adherence rubric. You can customize these points to really anything you want or anything you think will help the specific client that you're working with. In the evolution of these adherence rubrics, I pared it down to a 5-point rubric. It's a lot easier for the client, a lot quicker for them to execute. It's a lot less fatiguing of a accountability method for them. Even though a 10-point is a lot less fatiguing than, sending a food journal or keeping a food journal and with all the, the details, the macronutrient values and everything like that, calorie values, macronutrient values, fiber, etc. Even though the 10-point rubric system was faster than that and less fatiguing than that and much more attractive to people who were a little bit more pressed for time and didn't necessarily have the patience or the, I guess, the fortitude to do standard tracking, or maybe they just wanted to graduate towards something faster. Even though the 10-point rubric system was great for that, I piloted a 5-point system. I just decided to take the leap, and lo and behold, it works just as well as a 10-point. So here is a 5-point adherence rubric system. And once again, these adherence points can be customized. So with this one, it's get a minimum of 7 hours of sleep, do your scheduled physical activity or scheduled rest, drink a minimum of 2 liters of plain water per day, employ the water trick. The water trick is basically having 2 tall glasses of water right before you sit down to a meal. In research, it has this tendency to shave off 100 to 150-ish calories from what you would eat otherwise if you didn't have that water. Okay, eat only when physically hungry. Stop eating when satisfied, not stuffed. Whoa, I jumped the gun there. So this is a generic 5-point adherence rubric. And so it is literally a checklist that the client rates themselves on a scale of 1 to 5. They either write this number down on a calendar, on a physical calendar that's in front of their faces every day. But either way, they're sending you a number daily, and the accountability is really tight. When it's daily, it's right at the forefront of their minds. And you can customize. This doesn't even have to be about nutrition. It can be a habits adherence rubric. That's a mixture of nutrition and exercise stuff, or just a mixture of self-care related stuff. It really, the possibilities are endless here, and 5 points does work. Here's the accountability rubric in action. That's an email of mine sending one of my clients her assignment, and her 5-point rubric was a little bit different. I assigned her for one of the adherence points. It was 140 grams of protein, and then the rest of the calories can be from anything that she wanted. So this particular plan was a 1,700 calorie plan, and so 140 grams of protein a day, and the remainder of the calories from any proportion of carb and fat that she wanted, but there's just a little stipulation of getting a minimum of 40 grams of fat per day. And the third stipulation was to get a minimum of 25 grams of fiber a day. And then the fourth adherence point would be to nail the training or rest for the day. And then the fifth adherence point would be to take her supplements. So she would send me a number of 1 to 5 every day. And whatever adherence point that she'd miss, she would let me know which adherence point it was so we could detect patterns over time and work on the adherence points that she's missing and see how we could help her adhere to it or modify the plan. And thus far, it's been working amazing, as it has for many years through my client history. So those are adherence rubrics. And that is an idea that you can use when a client has been tracking the standard way for a time period that they're already adept at knowing what they're doing with that method, and they want to graduate to something more simple and quick. Okay, so assessment frequency for body comp goals. Body weight weekly is a good checkpoint, and weighing daily and taking the average weight for the week is better than just picking a single day out of the week to record a body weight. Body composition, in my experience, is best assessed monthly, and assessing weekly can be useful for physique competitors because things tend to change a lot more quickly, and things are a lot more regimented and rigorous with physique contest prep or photo prep or other such urgent endeavors. Pics, you can typically see differences in pictures on a monthly basis rather than a weekly basis. And Side note, okay, so clinical changes typically can be detected every 1 to 3 months. Now, you may be somebody who's interested in looking at clients' blood work, and that's fine. I want to remind you that being interested in knowing what's going on clinically is a good thing, and being aware is a good thing. But you just have to be careful about playing doctor in these situations, which may fall out of scope of practice of nutritional coaches. All right, so here is a method that I used in private practice in my brick and mortar nutritional counseling practice. Use the SOAP model for counseling sessions or for consulting sessions. So we go with SOAP, subjective, which is client feedback. This is what you collect. You collect subjective feedback from the client regarding the qualitative parameters, and then you get objective feedback and assessments. So objective client feedback or client assessments would, of course, include things like body comp and body weight and performance parameters. And then what you do when you've gotten the subjective and objective feedback is you assess what happened. You synthesize what happened. You synthesize the data and you make an informed judgment or assessment about what happened since the previous meeting. Were the goals met? Were the targets met? Are we on track? And then finally, last part of the session would be to make a plan. So just formulate the next steps based on the previous data points. That is the classic SOAP model for client sessions that are in person and in real time. And of course, now we can do it remotely, online. And with that, we have concluded lesson 5. I will see you back on lesson 6, where we talk about weaning off of tracking every little detail.